of you watching will be joined. People are gonna start to come on and join us late. Hi, Anna. Are gonna join us late, so they won't hear this. But I wanted everybody to know what this is about, because we have some people who have not been in our studio in person and certainly have not been on one of these Freeman Fridays. And I started these because people told me they needed a way to connect back in April. We thought this was a good way to do it, and we started to do them on a regular basis, and we stopped doing them for a little while, but we're back. And the goal is to provide some illumination on different subjects. Sometimes it's just an actor's life, or it's a writer. With Adam Rapp, it was a writer's life. And we also have queued up casting directors, managers, any aspect that will help an actor have better understanding of their craft and their careers. And this is a perfect event. This, for those of you who don't know these four actors, you will in a moment. They're all incredibly wonderful people, strong actors, and as I'm sure you'll find out, people with strong opinions. And I love them all. And they've been in and out of the studio, out of my life for many years. And I'm just thrilled. I'm going to sit back and watch. I do want to tell you that Black Theater United is an organization that they just started. And I just got wind of who they are and what they're doing. And it's very impressive and very important. So all the donations, these are normally free events, but we're asking for donations. You don't have to, but it's greatly appreciated. You see, you can start with $5, which is not very much money for what you might be spending if you were out there pre-COVID going to the movies or dinner or something. So think about that. If you don't want to donate right this moment, go on their website later and see what they're doing. I want to say what they're doing for a moment before we start. They are a group of theater artists. You'll be very impressed with the list of people that they have on board. And they are not only dedicated to the lives of Black creative artists, but also are pushing for political change. A lot of this money goes towards states where there's voter suppression or there's planned voter suppression. I want to change that, Georgia being paramount. They have an event a week from tonight. We're not going to have an event next week because they're doing something this very time, next Friday, that Stacey Abrams is being featured, who was elected the governor of Georgia, but was stolen. And Viola Davis is moderating it. That should be pretty cool.
Wow.
So tune into that. That's our cause, and please support it. We'll be having more of these Freeman Fridays. Look on our website. And I'll come back at the end and do a little follow-up. But I want to toss it over to Nana. Nana has all these women have fabulous resumes. Nana is not only an actor on stage, on television, she's also a writer and in many writer rooms at Netflix and AMC. And been on New Amsterdam and other TV shows, and as well as Margot Bingham, as well as Boardwalk Empire. She played famously daughter Maitland. How could I not remember that name? Such a good name, as the singer, and many other things. And I guess you'll talk about it. You're in the middle of being on another Walking Dead part of that franchise, and then things stopped. I think Christine also was involved in that. You'll talk about that. And you were involved in something, a pilot or something, Clara. I'm sure you'll talk about that, and that got stopped. But you've been on Billions for many years, and Christine was also the lead on a television show, The Arrangement, best thing in it, and this is fabulous. So I have a lot to talk about as far as careers, a lot to talk about as far as being women in TV. I'm going to learn as much as anybody. So I'm going to turn my video off and hand it over to Nana. I think I'm going to do that. Here we go.
Anna.
Hi.
Thank you for hosting.
Oh, hi, ladies. Hi, ladies. Hi, women. Okay, well, I'm just going to jump right in because I have so many questions that I hope will be, educational and hopefully entertaining for the people watching. So what were you guys each doing when COVID hit? What was the thing that you were working on creatively that kind of got interrupted? Clara?
For me, I was, I'm actually out in LA right now because I came out here on a job. It's an Amazon show called Goliath, and it's into its fourth and final season. And I came out here for the job, and I shot one day on it and promptly got shut down. So I sort of elected to stay out here because at the time it felt a little crazy to go back to New York. So I've just been hanging out in LA.
And where are you staying?
I'm in Silver Lake.
But you paying for an apartment in LA right now?
So there was a relocation fee that they very kindly extended to me. And then when this happened, my management went back and was like, hey, this is extraordinary circumstances. Could you help out? And they very kindly are able to help with my housing, which is amazing.
Wow. That's great. Christine, what about you?
I was working on a show, and I was in Texas, and we were just starting to do it really just started. Like, I think I was maybe like 2 episodes in to the series and just getting my groove, which was also great. Like, when you hit stride. I was doing this play in New York City before that, and it was like a grind and a half. And using all of that momentum going into like the show and it was awesome. And then this happened, and left Texas, went to Los Angeles. I was in Los Angeles at the start of this. Still had my apartment in Texas, which, whatever, it's the least problems, I guess. But coordinated, it's like, it's a lot when it's hard. Yeah. That part is hard, like when you have, especially the momentum of the work going, and then this happening, and then not knowing what was going on. So I went to Los Angeles. I was there for about a month and a half. I'm a New Yorker. I live on the East Coast. My boyfriend has 3 children that are on the East Coast. So it was important for us. So we were like waiting for like that window of that we thought it was a good time to like go. And I've been in New York since like April.
Margot, what were you working on when COVID struck?
I was working on an indie project. It was a film with the incredible Leslie Uggams, and who actually, I know, all honor to Leslie, back down to the queen, but I had the opportunity of working with her on New Amsterdam because she plays my co-star and love interest's mother on the show. So I had already met Leslie, so this was kind of like our bonding session, and we were having a really good time in Oklahoma, and I didn't know that I could actually, in all full transparency, I didn't know that I could have a good time in Oklahoma, but it was awesome. The food was great, and like the people were really amazing there. And then I think we might have been like one of the last productions holding on, at least in that area. And when things started getting really bad, we actually were, we were staying at this hotel, and I'll try to make this brief, but we were staying at a hotel right next door to the Thunders, the Oklahoma City Thunders, which was actually what shut down the NBA. We were there. We weren't actually at the game, but luckily nobody was really at our hotel. Normally there's only like 2 4- or 5-star hotels in Oklahoma City. Our hotel, the Skirvin, was one of them, but luckily our hotel was haunted. So none of the opposing teams have wanted to stay at the Skirvin for the past 10 years. So that actually saved us, because the other team would have stayed at our hotel.
Literally, big up to the ancestors.
Literally, if it was like any ancestral move, I was like, I'm so happy that I'm at a haunted hotel. This is the only thing that's like a saving grace right now. But throughout the night, I heard like all of the ambulances leaving the stadium because we were literally next door. And after that, everything kind of started popping off. And I drove to Dallas and then hopped on a one-way flight because there's no one-way directly to New York. So I was like, I want to cancel out 2 airports. And I went back to New York, and I've been in New York since.
So now, of all of the projects that you're talking about, have any of you heard anything about when work is going to resume? Because I imagine a lot of people who are watching this are very much like, when are we going back to work? But you guys actually had projects and that you're working on. Is there anything? Have you heard anything from any producers about what's next?
I don't know. I heard September maybe, but being in Texas or California where there have been huge spikes, everybody's like on thin ice. Like nobody wants to pull the trigger and go and waiting to see how the numbers are. And I know yesterday was a really bad day for the country. So it's kind of like, this is the idea and then we'll see. But nobody is confident, I don't think.
That's similarly what I was hearing too, is September-ish and no confidence.
Yeah, I heard for New York, September, and then for another project, February of next year. So I'm just kind of thinking 2021.
Right. Yeah. So now I want to take, now that we know we may never act again, let's take it back to the beginning. I wanted to talk, because so many people who are watching are early career, early mid-career. So I wanted to talk about your guys' start. And, how did you, first thing, just financially, how did you guys make ends meet before you were able to earn a living off of your acting? Share whatever you want to share, just in terms of anything that was particularly outlandish, go ahead.
Well, I was my own super. So I had an apartment in the West Village that I was living in with like a couple of girls, and then they moved out and I had this apartment, and then I had another friend with another apartment on a nicer block, equally as shitty but a nicer block, and I wanted to move in with her, but I still had my previous lease. So I was like, this was before, like, maybe Airbnb existed, but it wasn't what it was now. It was like Craigslist. So I would Craigslist and Airbnb the apartment for like short-term rentals. And it was like on Bleecker Street, Bleecker and Cornelia. And it was super old, ceilings would crack, but it would rent like crazy because people wanted to be in that neighborhood. And I did my best to like make it nice. Like I would have a bottle of wine when people come in, but I would, if things would break, whether it was the toilet would break, like I couldn't call my super because what I was doing was not legal. So I had to go and plunge the toilet, change the light bulbs. One girl didn't know, because in Europe, I guess no one has an air conditioner, first of all. But I had an AC unit in the window, and she like opened the window, so the AC unit fell out. So I was like, what, you don't, like, gravity doesn't exist in Europe? Like, so it's like shit like that, but that was one of my jobs. But I had so many, but that was one of my more like savvy jobs, because it was like, okay, I have to do this for hours that I could, make do on my own. So I was able to go to auditions and stuff. But because working in restaurants is also great, but working at night in nightclubs is terrible because you don't get any sleep. So I knew I didn't want to do that. And that was something I did. But I've worked in, hair salons, for a financial company for a minute. But again, the hardest thing was always getting the time off to go on auditions. Forget about a job, like just to go on auditions, which like you can't say no. So New York is good with being resourceful, like the hustle.
Yeah. Margot, do you have any early career hustle stories?
Well, before I moved to New York, I've been in New York probably now 11 years, and I'm originally from Pittsburgh. And before I left Pittsburgh, I was in college full time, and I was also working like 3 jobs. I worked at a nightclub. I was a bottle service manager, so I like helped the fancy people who could spend the dough into the club, walk them into the club, and then I also randomly was like a bar back right after that. So I went from like glam and glitz to like holding like all the things, and occasionally I worked a couple other odd end jobs, and I was a teacher. And then when I moved here, I also taught, and I was a nanny. and that kind of gave me the opportunity to go out on auditions. I also saved up before I left so that I could have some kind of safety net so that I could really focus on being here. I left school, I didn't graduate, and my family was nice enough to give me a year to get my shit together and somewhat make it. And I had no friends, no contacts here. And it literally took me 10 months in before I got my first break. But until then, I planned a safety net so that I could have a year, because a year was all that my parents were giving me.
Clara?
Totally. I moved to New York in 2012, I think. But I feel like you guys pretty much nailed what I did too. I worked in, I was a hostess at a fine dining restaurant for 2.5 years. It was a lot of stairs, because coat check was on like the subfloor, and then the main dining floor was, up here. So it was a lot of just running coats up and down stairs. And then I also did a little bit of proofreading, and still do actually from time to time. Before I figured out I wanted to be an actor, I worked in advertising and did that for a little bit. And I worked in production back in Chicago. I'm originally from a Chicago suburb called Skokie. And so I've always been sort of spelling and grammar happy. So I parlayed that into like a little side thing that I would do every now and again in New York as well.
So now the next step of this is you're hustling, you're doing what you got to do, living off your savings, being a landlord, a fake landlord, illegal landlord. And then when was the moment, or was there an exact moment where you felt like your career was taking off? Like you were really like getting traction, things were moving forward. Was there ever a moment like that? And my follow-up to that question was that the real moment? Because a lot of times in this career, you think things are taking off. You're like, oh, this is it. And then, you lose momentum. So was there a moment where you were like, it's happening? And was that really the moment?
Yeah, it's never the moment. There will never be a moment. Like, you have to continue to work no matter what. And when you don't get it anymore. And I've seen it happen to so many actors, and like kind of seen it happen to me. The second you like take a day off, it's not going to be there tomorrow. And I know this for actors, for writers, it's the same thing. Like, you can't rest upon your success. Like, it doesn't exist. And that's what I'll say. Like, it's not that I say like you're never going to be happy or satisfied, but you should never be comfortable. Mm-hmm. I think there's a moment when you realize, like, I know there was a realize I was like, okay, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And I remember I was in those shitty apartments, and I was doing the super thing, but I was starting to get like guest spots, and like the guest spots would turn from 1 to 3 episodes, which was huge. And like when that started to happen, I was like, okay, I think I was in like my early 20s. Like, okay, I think this is going to happen. And then I would get leads in pilots. Like, and I was like, this is awesome. And then they would never see the light of day. And that happened a couple of times, and that's never fun. But you start to realize, no, it just becomes a reality that like, no, this is something I'm going to do, and it's going to happen, and it's just not going to be easy. So I think that's something that people really do, especially knowing what I know now. Like, it's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be comfortable. And no matter, I was a star of a television show for a few seasons. Like, it doesn't mean that anything after that it's a little easier, people know your name, but like, that doesn't mean they're gonna pay you,
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
I guess for me, my first break, or I guess like walk in any kind of door anywhere, was when I moved to New York, and it was like the 9th or 10th month into the year that I needed to make it. I had been going back and forth on auditions for a long time, and I started out in theater, And I went to this audition for Rent, and I showed up at 4:00 in the morning, and it started at 9 in the morning, and it was equity only. And I didn't finish school, so I didn't have an equity card. I had no representation. I had like really nobody around that I could know for casting or anything. So I waited in line with a possibility that maybe they would see non-equity union people. I was number 719. I still have my sticker and ticket.
Wow.
And
Awesome.
the first 5 or 6 auditions were actually interns walking up and down the lines of thousands of people wrapped around New York blocks. And they were just going down the line and typecasting people out. And these are kids that were like maybe a few years older than me, and probably, as we all know, didn't really have any kind of experience. They were just like an intern somewhere, and they just, however they woke up that day, they were choosing your fate. And luckily I got typecasted enough and kind of through the process enough that I was brought inside to sing my 8 bars of a song a cappella before I could reach the pianist for my 16-bar cut. And I went through the whole day, and by my 13th audition, that was within the day, I had 5 type outs and then 3 actually in the room. So with the whole process, I had 13 auditions total, and then I finally got the job. And everybody else in the show had an agent, so I thought that was kind of the next move. So I had hired my own personal messenger to hand out my resume and headshot to 12 different agencies, because I was like, I'm gonna stand out. This is not gonna be mailed in and used as a coaster. So I paid a messenger to literally hand it. I don't know who he handed it off to. And I had 5 out of the 12 call, which was a pretty good number. And then only 4 actually made an appointment with me. 1 canceled before the appointment. The other one actually made me wait in the waiting room while he was on the phone with somebody else for an hour and never actually saw me. And I had 2 meetings out of the whole thing. And then I signed with an agent. And once I finally signed with that agent, I felt like I was on the move.
Amazing. Amazing.
That's awesome.
My next question is for Clara, actually, but also everyone. I want to talk about intimacy coordination. Because as you may or may not know, the people watching, Clara plays a dominatrix on Boardwalk. And in fact, Troy, who is the coach, the BDSM coach on Billions.
You know her?
Yes, I worked with Troy. So and she's now training to become an intimacy coordinator. So I wanted to, it's for those of you watching who might not know what that is, it's a new phenomenon that kind of grew out of the Me Too movement. Crazy. Of just the fact that actors have to do, highly sensual, sexualized work. And yet we have unions of fight choreographers, we have directors of unionized directors. We don't have anybody to kind of like walk us through this very precarious, choreography, sexualized choreography when we're doing intimacy scenes. So now there has been a unionized effort to take people from all across from different, areas of the business. A lot of them are former movement teachers or whatever, and they've become intimacy coordinators. So Clara, I wanted to talk to you specifically because you had such sexy scenes in Billions.
Yes.
Do you, well, sexy to some,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
But like, can you speak a little bit about intimacy coordination? Do you feel like we need it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? What are your thoughts?
So I think that is probably the only sort of sexy scene that I was ever, or sexy kind of role that I was hired to do. I'm thinking back and I was supposed to do something sexy in Vinyl, but then Vinyl got canceled. And so I didn't have to do the scene. But it's interesting because on Billions, I didn't feel that it was like, it's intimate, but I think because I was so wrapped up in whatever clothing they put me in, it didn't feel super. And also I'm playing somebody who's got the power in that scene. So I think it's a little different with that particular one. I think it's important that the actors feel comfortable. So if the actors are saying, hey, it would really help me to do my job well, to have a third party there to walk me through it, to make sure that, you know, other people on set are being respectful, I think that's awesome. For some actors, I think, who may have done it for a long time, have been in the industry for a while, sometimes I don't know if that's necessarily helpful if it's another person coming in and sort of getting, I don't know. It's tricky. I think for the actors to feel comfortable is what's most important. And I think, honestly, for actors who are probably in the beginning stages of their career, they're going to want somebody who's there.
Right. Like
I have a lot to say about this.
Please say.
I do too. So I want to
Be really quick. Be really quick. So the show that I starred in for a few seasons, there was every episode I was in pasties and a sticker, you know, like stickers, like not even clothes. And thankfully, I really got along with my co-star, and it was really him. There was a couple other guys, maybe one other guy had like an intimacy, but for the most part, the sexual scenes were with the same guy, and thankfully, him and I got along, and we were able to navigate all those scenes together. But not every job has been like that, and I think the amount of times, even when I was younger, and I would come on and playing the prostitute or playing the girl that was the stripper for the party, because there's a disproportionate number of stripper roles to female actresses. So the odds are you're going to do a role like that. And I remember like showing up, I was a day player, guest star, like in the episode, and it being really uncomfortable for me. And I was the only one in panties on set, and that was not okay. And I just did a play. So I never had an intimacy coach. Fight scenes, forget it. So you pretend to get slapped in the face, barely a fight. That's like 3 hours of fight coordination. 3 hours, okay? Forget all this other stuff. So I just did a play over the winter in New York City, off-Broadway play about young lawyer who gets raped by her boss. So every night on stage, there was this rape scene and a bunch of other stuff. And at rehearsal, there was an intimacy coach. And thank God, because if I had to work with this guy who also was a nightmare and a half, older guy, different generation, didn't believe in the intimacy coach. Could you imagine if I was like left to my own devices with this guy, me and this director that we had at the time, who ended up being fired because of various reasons, but like I was on my own. And if I didn't have this woman working with me against this guy who was against her, which means he's really against women, like, let's be real, and he's raping me, like, like what the actual fuck? Like I couldn't, I'm getting so anxious even thinking about it. And that was the first time I ever worked with somebody. And if I didn't have her to like make sure I was okay and check in and make sure the wrist grab and the essential fight scene, because it's a rape scene, was going accordingly, like I don't know what would happen. So I think it's like, yeah, you know, if you're on a series for an extended period of time and you work with the same person, you kind of got your routine. To your point, Clara, I get it. Like, you know, but it's for the person that is in a very uncomfortable situation. Yeah. And you're like, you're naked. Like,
well, I will also say, totally. And I will also say that like, it makes the art better in most cases. I just finished watching, a couple months ago, Normal People on Hulu. And it has very, very realistic depictions of sex in that show. And I come to find out they worked with an intimacy coordinator. Her name is Ida O'Brien, or Ida, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but there were profiles on her, on the intimacy coordinator in this show, because the sex was so realistic. I was like, how are they doing this?
So I elevated it. I
ahead.
just have something to say really quickly because I know that you have other questions to ask Nana. But Christine, that's amazing to hear your story like that, because you are literally the first person that I've heard a good story from for an intimacy coordinator. My kind of pause and questioning with intimacy coordinators, there's been a lot that I've heard are former stunt people that have just crossed over into being an intimacy coordinator. Yes. And have literally no training. I think that there needs to be intimacy coordinators that have psychological training, that has training with actors, that has training with women and men in abuse, because there can't just be a coordinator that is anti-male. Because I've actually heard of friends.
That's true. I get that.
I've heard of friends that have had that too. I have a very dear friend of mine that dealt with an intimacy coordinator that literally was like just kind of abused because he was a man, and he was shamed by being a man, and he was made very uncomfortable, and there was no one for him to go to, and he felt like that wasn't his place, and eventually he ended up leaving the show because it was so uncomfortable. So I think that there's a placement for this, and there needs to be a conversation with intimacy coordinators and directors involved and the actors involved, just like you were saying, Clara, that I think that if actors are requiring this or asking for a coordinator, because you never really know, Christine, to your point, the kind of environment that you're going to be in. But to Clara's point, sometimes you just want to work hand on with your director. I've had friends that are very well-to-do directors that have been in the industry for over 25 years, and they are stopped from literally talking to their actor because an intimacy coordinator wasn't allowing them to, because it's basically to cover production's asses. So I think that there needs to be a conversation with actors included, because there are certain people that need certain things. And to your point, Christine, you don't know what kind of environment you're going to walk into. You really needed that person on your side to make sure that you were comfortable. And I respect that. And I think that that's so important. But all the other people that are not equipped, like the woman that helped in Normal People, what about the people that are literally just transitioning from stunt people into other departments with no kind of background? That does more damage, in my opinion, than more good.
Yeah, it's hard because you want to create that conversation. You want actors to tell you how to feel. To be totally honest, I don't know if Josh Henderson, the actor, and I that were on the arrangement together for years, I don't know if we would have used an intimacy coach. She might have been there. We'd be like, okay, we got it. It's somebody. It's almost like a SAG rep that's around if you want to work with them, especially when you're doing a series of, every day, all day, especially a television series with the same people all the time. I get it. Like, you're able, and I would have been totally okay with not using it. However, if I wasn't, and having somebody like a confidant to talk to, it's like, we got SAG people walking around all the time. We got the thing, like, why not just have that resource if it's available? It doesn't mean that they have the authority to take over the whole scene and take over the whole set. And that's true.
It would just be great if everybody were respectful and accountable for each other's experience, not just the actors responsible for themselves, but having an intimacy coordinator who also liaises with the director, who also brings in, just having the conversation openly and making people feel like they can speak up for what would make them comfortable, I think what we're all after.
I think one of the issues, of course, is that the environment on a set, again, to those of the viewers who haven't worked a lot on higher budget productions, it is, and even lower budget productions, it's very hierarchical. And so a lot of times there's a culture of silence. It is hard to speak up and advocate for yourself. So I think it's true, especially for the people who are just starting out, the 21-year-old who's showing up in pasties and a sticker, to just give her a little bit more agency, I think is what the industry is maybe trying to do. Anyway, speak in that line of power and whatnot. I remember reading or hearing somewhere that Philip Seymour Hoffman always said that to be an actor is to be like, please, 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 fuck you, and then just do it all over again, And I was wondering, how do you guys keep, because we are often asking for jobs, we are asking to be hired, but then also once you get the job, you need to be confident and secure in your artistry. And so I'm wondering, how do you guys balance the kind of servant archetype and the queen archetype in your work?
Christine?
Okay. I think there's definitely power in no, right? Like there's power in no. And as people, women especially, like you don't say no because like you don't, I mean, this went when we were talking about the pay gap between women and men. Like women would just, take the offer that was given to them and men say no, fuck you, give me more. But in terms of work, yeah, there's the whole, I guess it's like it's a hard thing because you want to stand up for yourself. You want to say yes, especially in the beginning. You take the roles, you take all the shitty roles, you take the stripper role. I wouldn't do it now. I would. And that I guess that's the answer. Like there are more. I have not only just in myself, and it has nothing to do with financial success at all because I'm still working in the financial aspect of it, but it has more of like the authority that I have. I'm comfortable enough in my profession and knowing that I'm working as an actress in my craft to not take something because it's demeaning or it's not something I believe in or it's not a role I could connect to in any way. So there's the no, and that's the power, but it comes really from in time, and it really does come from within. But I do think that no is not heard often. And when you say no, and it could be in a really nice way, like, no, I'm not willing to take this much money, or no, I'm not willing to do this role. I think people then are immediately like, oh, well, wait a minute. And then they'll readjust and come back. Like,
You have to teach people how to treat you.
Totally. And it's your job to do that. It's nobody else's job. You are the authority. Hopefully you have a good manager, a good agent that could advocate for you. But really at the end of the day, it's you, and you have to feel that for yourself. But that's all I'll say about that. But
yeah, Margot, Clara, do you have anything to add?
Clara, you were starting to talk before. I don't want to.
Oh no, it's all good. I mean, it's certainly something that I personally am working on, is feeling like I'm good enough, that I deserve the role. There's a lot of what's the word? What's that?
Anxiety, or
there's anxiety, there's stress, there's also imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of that I'm working on. But I think, again, in line with what we were talking about before, if you treat, the servant and the queen diametrically opposed, but I think if you get the job and you walk in and you just are there to work with other people and you see them as people, you see them as your collaborators, I think it's a nice way to enter the conversation, to be like, let me see who it is that I'm working with today. Let me meet you where you're at. And if I can approach it from that way, I feel less like, oh my God, I have something to prove, or oh my God, I'm better than this person, which I never really feel ever.
Yeah.
But if you sort of are like, okay, I'm going to meet you here and I'm going to be present with you, it's sort of kind of not so far from just acting itself,
Yeah.
Right?
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily feel the push and pull that much if I sort of reframe it and look at it that way.
That's great. That's great. Margot, did you want to add anything? I was going to move on.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think that if you look at everything, just like Clara, you were saying, if you look at everything as a new experience and kind of excited about, I always look at every new job as like my first day at school, and there's the butterflies in your stomach and there's the anticipation, and you're packing your lunch the night before and you're picking out your clothes the night before, and it's like you're questioning yourself, you're questioning who you're going to sit with at the cafeteria, and if you're lucky enough to get to that point, it's so exciting that you can still feel the butterflies. So I think it's a constant reminder whenever I do feel those butterflies in my stomach that I'm doing the right thing. I'm on the right path, because it's only the wrong path when those butterflies stop. I'm lucky enough that I can still continue to pack a new bag every once in a while because people are hiring. And I know that a lot of people aren't as lucky, and a lot of that comes with luck. But I take every single thing with gratitude. There's a lot of times that I question myself, and that's actually one of the reasons why I showed up at Scott Freeman's studio, is, like a nice little plug for the studio, because literally I was looking for a teacher and a place and community that I could build my confidence again. Because even though I was on set, even though I had a job, even though that job was not in danger at all of being taken away from me, I still questioned myself because it was a bit of imposter syndrome. And, but it was also just like, I was watching myself way too much, and I was really critiquing myself way too much, and I was in my head a little bit way too much. And I had to kind of step back and almost jump into another community where I wasn't able to tear myself down.
Well, thank you for saying that, because that actually segues to my next question of what are you guys doing to keep sharp, to kind of stay in the world, in the business during this time? How are you managing?
I'll go first in that. I'm not doing well. Definitely not managing this well. At the beginning of quarantine, it seemed like everybody and their mother was being creative. I was on social media all the time. Everybody, I'm a singer also, and everybody that I knew was putting out a new song that they just sang, or like writing a new play, or writing, you know, like for everybody that doesn't know, Nana is an unbelievable writer, along with actress and just like extraordinaire. And she just constantly is creating. So it's just, but I look at other people, not with jealousy, but with a bit of envy, because I just felt like they were happier in this moment than me. And I didn't feel like I was pushed to do anything. Nothing was coming to mind. And then I went through the process of just like kind of decluttering my space and hoping that that would bring some kind of creativity. And then I finally just sunk into the fact that creativity wasn't coming, and now I'm actually being creative. So who knows? These are crazy times, and I think however we are is exactly the place that we need to be. And I finally stopped critiquing that place and saying that I need to be somewhere, and I'm just here. And some days are really bad and some days are really good, and I take it day by day.
Amazing, amazing. I need to segue to some of the Q&A questions. Hi, Jen Jacob.
Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jen.
Well, let me start with Jen's question. What are y'all's plans to get, similar to what I just asked, but like, do you guys have any plans? Well, Jen, why don't you ask it yourself?
Jen.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know this was going to be a thing. You're all so talented and beautiful, and I'm so excited to be listening in on this. Yeah, my question was, I think we're all like freaking out, and if there's truly not going to be work, you know, for the foreseeable future. It's interesting, Clara and I have been talking about this word anyway recently, just like what are you going to do? Like, what do you have any plans on what, besides just maybe focusing on, you know, your own social media, or like trying to write something? Is all of these are really great ideas, but is there anything else that comes to mind for all of us not currently waiting on projects?
A friend of mine, I'm half joking, but a friend of mine, as soon as quarantine was announced, she was in the middle of shooting the final season of her show. She was like, well, guess I'm gonna get pregnant. And she got pregnant.
Oh my God.
She was like,
amazing.
Jen.
Don't suggest that to my
No,
mother-in-law.
Jen.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Jen, if you're born,
That's
just
hilarious.
I mean, shout out to
no.
Jesse Rubin.
Jesse Rubin, what?
You guys are in my earphones, thank God.
Please answer the question seriously. Don't mind me.
So I was like definitely riddled with anxiety at the start of this whole thing, and like not knowing what to do, and thankfully I have a job, like in theory, right? Like that's amazing. I thank God every day for that. But I don't know when it's happening, and it's, you know, who knows? But what am I doing in the meantime? And I'm just podcasts. And I have found a love of podcasts and starting my own podcast. And I have this, and I'm working with this production company that friends of mine that I've known for a long time. And the idea is to do a scripted mini series of podcasts, a scripted podcast series, instead of like making a pilot that might not see the dawn of day. And there's this whole movement of making a podcast to promote a series that you will inevitably sell to a studio, create a fan base throughout that process of listening to the podcasts, get some really great actors attached to the podcast because it's like a day of work. They could do it from home.
That's
and it
amazing.
kind of expedites the pilot making, and you're creating fans in the process. You're doing something creative. You're literally telling a story and hopefully selling that to a studio. So that's something that I've discovered in quarantine. And that seems like something that's feasible and, creative at the same time. And it's development, which is great. And I'm working on a brand for myself of products that I'm making, just trying to stay as creative and entrepreneurial as possible, because who knows when we'll start making money again as actors. So.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. Props.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah. Margot or Clara, do you guys have anything to add? Otherwise, I'll move on.
I mean, at the very, very beginning of quarantine, I flirted with the idea of learning how to code Ruby on Rails.
That's cool.
That was a very brief flirtation.
Oh my God.
Because I have fallen off that completely. I might revisit it again at some point.
That's so cool.
But it was like, why not? Why not learn a new skill? But it is also very tedious and difficult. So I was like, I'll work on accents instead or something.
I'd love to learn to code.
Margot?
I've been doing a lot of gardening.
Nice.
And we, me and my partner, we have a little backyard patio situation. And we're lucky in that sense, but we're not so lucky because we have a snail infestation. So for anybody that knows gardening, snails suck. And unfortunately, we don't have a duck that we could just like rent to eat these friggin' snails. But so they've been like eating my beds. So everything is going indoors. And I just don't really want like a ton of vegetables in here either. Like I don't want this to turn into like a vegetable meth lab. So it's, I'm just trying to figure it out,
Okay, we're doing our best. We're doing our best. I have 2 questions about representation in the Q&A, and anyone else, please pop in there. Please pop in if you have any other questions. I'll try to get through them with the time we have left. But 2 people did ask about advice or anything about connecting with representation and agents and managers. The first question is, how did you find your representation? Assuming you were already trained, experienced, etc. How did you connect with them and get repped? And then, Margot, you already went into this, so yep. I know you already spoke to that. But and then the second question was advice for signing with your first agent or manager, how you each did that. Thanks.
Okay, going back to like the starting out thing, what I wanted to say earlier about the job thing, one job I wish I knew then that I didn't know now is like being a reader. Like being a reader for a casting director is not only super educational because you watch how people do things, but you communicate with the casting director, you develop a relationship with the casting director, which will segue to other casting director relationships because they all kind of know each other. And I think that was like such a great job that I didn't tap into, and I might have if I had known more about it. So I always thought that was really cool. Like to be a fly on the wall, like, and be paid for it and develop relationships seems like a no-brainer. But I was doing, I was super young. I think I was still in high school. I grew up on Staten Island. I would go into the city every day, and I was working out of HB Studios, and I was doing a play there on Bank Street, and a woman had come to see the play. I think I was like maybe 18 years old. And she's my manager to this day.
Wow.
I'm 33. She's still my manager. She's amazing. She works really hard. So I got really lucky. Other than that, I've been under every agency under the sun. So, and that's hard. I think my advice is, and you girls might not, agree, but I love having a manager, and I feel like my manager has been with me for so long, obviously, but has really helped guide me through the agencies and stuff, because agencies, a lot of the time, it's like a big organization. They're very corporate. There's literal numbers that you have to hit. And while they're not all like that, you know, and I think a lot of agents are super passionate about their actors, and they're great. And I could probably let you know every agency I think of that really has that experience. But for the most part, you're dealing with a corporation, you know, and that's not always easy. So you really want to have like a good person on your side. And I always felt like having a manager is important first, and they'll get you in through the agency. That's my thought.
I think it's important to also keep in mind that it's show business for a reason, because there's business involved. I think that I've had a lot of friends that have come to me to help them through the disconnecting of their agency ties or management ties. I've let go of 2 agents. I've let go of 2 managers. I'm sure we've all fired our slew of people on this call. But it doesn't get any easier anytime you do it. But I think that it's good to kind of keep in mind that if the tables were turned, and if you or if we were not doing the jobs, if we weren't making the money and bringing in the business for corporations, like you said, Christine, like for these big corporate, you know, businesses, then they wouldn't think twice about letting us go.
I was almost 22 from an agency.
Right. So I think that sometimes people, actors, because we're always yes people and we want to please everybody, I think that it's really important for everybody listening on this call to know your worth, and things cannot be created without you. So you have a right to let somebody go, and you do not have to feel bad about that, and you don't have to justify firing somebody. If you don't like them, if it's not fitting you, if it's not suiting you, let them go. They wouldn't think twice to let you go. It is show business.
Woo! Preach!
Absolutely.
Clara, do you have anything to add?
Well, I was just going to speak to getting the first agent. Like Christine was saying, for me, there was a lot of luck and sort of fortuitous happenstance that happened for me to get it. But I remember the thing that led up to it, and I'm sure everybody on this call has done these, are going to casting director workshops and agent workshops. I found, for me, the casting director ones were a little bit more useful because they could see my work and then they would bring me in. And ultimately what happened was that a casting director that I met at one of those workshops brought me in to audition for a thing. I booked the thing, and then that spot or that particular scene was the one that my now agents saw and then pretty much signed me after they had seen the work. So that would be my advice. But again, the casting director has to be casting for your kind of role in the moment when you go do one of these. So there's a lot of luck involved as well.
I will say, I just want to piggyback on that, and this is not about me. Even though Jen Jacob is like, Nana, talk more about yourself, but like, we don't have time for that.
Yes.
So, but I will just piggyback on that, is that for our early career folks in the audience, I also found a fair amount of luck with doing classes like at one-on-one and those types of, I mean, who knows when they're going to come back. Actors Connection, things like that, with casting directors. I skipped the agent part because I think, especially, and I don't know, you know, the breakdown of who's in the audience, but speaking from my experience as a dark-skinned Black woman, nobody's ever really looking for me. So like, I felt like going for an agent was not going to be helpful because they didn't have the imagination to figure out how to sell me, because it is, you know, show business. So I found going through casting directors who sometimes have a more a wider lens, and they're just trying to find the right person for the job, and that allows them to be a little bit more imaginative, a little bit more daring, and the stakes are lower because they're bringing in 25 people for that one part. So what is it to bring you in if they know that you're, you know, if you have talent and you're not going to embarrass them in front of their bosses, you know? So I find investing in relationships with casting directors to be a lot more fruitful than trying to chase an agent. Because once you book something, somebody's going to come around and be like, oh, I want 10% of that. So, you know. The other one, somebody said, no question, but want to say, Margot, I love you. You're the best.
Thanks.
Yeah. So there's that. We got fans.
Hi.
We got fans.
Thank you.
And then Encompass Tutorial Services has asked, do you feel that, well, does Encompass want to speak for themselves? Yes?
Oh, hello. Hi. Also, Christine, I am a Texan, so I can appreciate your experience coming to Texas and how that made me strange. No, I just wanted to ask, I'm not in the industry, but have been enjoying this talk, and I wanted to know, we've heard a lot about like what you've been doing in COVID and your initial thoughts on COVID, but has been a theme is there's so much in this industry that's out of your control. Do you feel that your unions or management or other governing agencies have responded appropriately or quickly or are adjusting to meet your professional needs?
That's a fantastic question.
That's a great question.
I've listened to all of the union conversations, all of the Zoom conversations. To me, and I would love to hear you ladies' thoughts, your thoughts on this. It feels like we're just kind of in this like spinning wheel that everybody just keeps talking about. We want to keep everybody safe. We want to keep everybody covered. But there's really no plan. And I think that it's just because of the times that we're in that every single day things change every single day. So I'm not necessarily blaming any union or party for that. I think that luckily it seems like IATSE and SAG and a lot of our union reps have really stuck together, which has been really a beautiful thing and not normally the case. But it will be interesting to see how any kind of plan rolls out, because what was yesterday's news of what was safe is not today's news. So even in a week's difference, everything could change, and we are in a contact sport. So this will be a very different kind of Hollywood and world that we're in for a while until there's a vaccine. And then obviously there's the question and conversation of people willing or wanting to take the vaccine. So I don't know if there's any answer yet. And that's probably the scariest thing, because as actors, we are in the front lines of this particular unit, and we can't wear the masks because that's not what you're seeing on screen.
I just want to add in that somebody slipped into the Q&A a link to a Variety article that says New York City allowing film and TV production to resume next week. So
yeah, under what circumstance? It's like,
right.
It's like I feel like, look, the unions have been great, and I truly believe that everybody wants us to go back to work. The studios want us to go back to work, the networks, every actor. But I think that if you look at the pages of the union rules, you have SAG, you have Cinematographers Union, the Directors Union, and you have all these unions working together, but really fighting for things and using this opportunity to get things that they've been trying to advocate for years that aren't necessarily COVID related, whereas like the cinematographers don't get overtime, which is also crazy. So they are vying for, we're used to what, 15-hour day, 12-hour day, but by the end of the day, you're working 15 hours, especially girls, you go in 2 hours early for makeup. So now they're trying to do 10-hour days max. So it's like,
or the French schedule of 8 hours, yeah.
Right, which sounds great in theory, but the shooting schedules are going to be a lot longer, and you're not getting paid for that time, which is fine. Whatever we got to do to get back to work. But testing, whether you test on-site testing or every 3-day testing, what's that going to look like? All of these tests, by the way, we don't know how accurate they are. There's a lot of negatives, false positives. So if you get 2 people, you have to shut down production that day. How many millions of dollars is that? I guess all I'm saying is, if this thing in New York is true and we're going to go back to work, I'm all for it. I'll take the necessary precautions. I'm sure there'll be smaller crews. There'll be no craft service things. Like whatever you have to do, separate makeup trailers, reporting, self-reports to set because you don't want to do a shared transpo van. All that stuff is great. And you're willing to do it until we get a vaccine. But like once you get up and running, I think it's going to be a lot harder than we realize. But I think we just got to go.
Yeah.
I also feel like in reading it was like a 20-some page document that SAG had come up with. Mm-hmm. And I know that everybody wants people to be safe, and that's the overarching thing. But I just feel like there isn't enough specificity yet in any of those things. They're like, there will be hand sanitizer available. Well, I would prefer if it were like every 50 feet, there will be one bottle of like 50 ounce, hand sanitizer, or per however many square feet or cubic feet, there will be maybe a HEPA filter that's running, or just like very specific things like that I can look to and say, is this something I feel comfortable working with, or is it not? Because ultimately it is still your choice whether or not you want to put yourself in a circumstance like that.
Right. Thank you. So it is 6 o'clock, so we're going to start winding down. I just had 2 more questions for you, lovelies. The first one is COVID related. Shout out to anything. This is your opportunity to shout out anything that has been helping you get through. What are you reading? What are you watching? Is it YouTube videos of floating babies, which I've recently discovered, which is very calming? Is there, what is helping? What can you recommend to other anxious actors who are, fraught with, unknowing in this time?
I've been doing meditations on the Calm app. That's been helping. I start my day out with coffee and meditation. Or if I don't start my day out with that, I end my day with meditation. I've always struggled with meditation, but I know that it brings my mind a lot of calm. I've also been reading as much as I possibly can, getting my hands into soil, grounding as much as possible, getting my toes and my feet on the ground, some kind of wood, concrete, soil, anything like that. Stepping out for some fresh air, I think, is important. And following up on all things Black Lives Matter, and trying my best to be an advocate for all of the people who are less enfranchised than me.
Same. Trying to listen, get involved in organizations, especially out here. I'm in Long Island, I'm in the Hamptons, and, finding there's this, maybe for the next week's episode when we come back, and Nana, you could be in this seat and have somebody else so you could talk, because I know you have a lot to say, but listening and finding organizations that I am willing to like just push and put my money where my mouth is, and not just like, talk about this kind of stuff, but like really take action on it. And there's a great organization out here that I've been working with and reading. And there's this great book that I found called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And it's just about daily habits and how small things mean big things, and whether it's starting to meditate, what can you do every day to fuel that, to get in charge of that. And as actors, we really have to be self-motivated and self-disciplined, and that's hard. That's really hard. And I know I have a problem with discipline, and this book has really kind of showed me and given me the path to that. It's a book I totally recommend for any industry, but it's definitely helped me as an actor.
Great.
I watch animal videos and specifically gorilla videos. My boyfriend put me on to gorilla videos. They're amazing to watch. They're amazing. And I do a lot of like lying on the floor. I lie on the floor a lot.
Grounding. It's the same.
That's what I do.
Yeah, I lie on the floor too. I do lie on the floor as well. And then lastly, let's see. In the Q&A box, people are sharing resources about COVID and their anxieties about getting back to work. So, I feel like we've covered that. I did want to talk about representation. I recently saw on Netflix Disclosure, the documentary about trans representation in media.
Yes.
And I got into a very hot discussion with a very well-known actor who shall remain nameless. But it got quite heated because he said a couple years ago, Scarlett Johansson was supposed to star as a trans man in a film called Rub and Tug. When it was announced, a lot of, she has been a lightning rod in terms of representation a couple times in her career, but a lot of people stepped forward and said, this isn't right. If you're going to tell a trans man's story, why can't a trans man play a trans man? And it was calamitous, and now the film never got made. This actor was supposing that, a young trans person in Wichita who doesn't know other trans people, or who, you know, doesn't think they know of any trans people, lost an opportunity to see that movie and to see themselves reflected. And therefore, it was a tragedy that Scarlett Johansson did not play a trans man in this film. After seeing Disclosure, which really dissected, I highly recommend it to anybody, but after seeing Disclosure, I really took issue with that standpoint. But I don't know if I'm alone. I would love to hear from you guys. If you guys, you know, just to round out, where are you guys in terms of representation? Because we're all cisgender women on this call, have you guys made any personal commitments to equitable representation?
I mean, that story sucks. It sucks. Like, it just sucks that, you know, you, again, going back to the point we made before, the whole show business thing, that it's a business and there's certain names that drive projects, and that's how you sell it in an oversaturated market where we have so many film and television. Like, you know, what could you use? But I also feel like we have so many platforms available. Like, why can't we put a film like that with a trans actor on Hulu or whatever 50 other platforms there are, and let it and see for it? Why do we have to convince some, you know, business financier guy that this is the thing that's going to sell? This is the equation. This is how you get the money. Like, it doesn't work like that. And it really does suck. And I don't know the answer to it. I think we just have to, you know, I think we have to do it. We have to make those films with appropriate cast and tell the stories and put it out there. And, you know, I think it's among us to, as the people in general, to promote it. And it's a new conversation that we're all having that we haven't had before. Just when you thought of that, I thought of Trans America with Felicity Huffman. Didn't that come out like a long time ago?
Right.
You know, and now we're starting to realize, oh, wait, we shouldn't have a white person play an Asian person. Like Mickey Rooney in
Right.
Tiffany's. I'm like, we can't do that now. And I'm glad we're at least acknowledging that like we can't do those things now. Like, that's not okay.
I think to the actor that was opposing this conversation and Scarlett playing that role and saying that the kid in Wichita was, you know, he won't ever be able to see that role on TV. I think that that's kind of part of the problem. The fact that he's saying that there can't be a movie unless Scarlett is the lead of this movie to show that child in Wichita that it's okay to be who they are, is the problem. Just because Scarlett wasn't able to do this movie, I hope that we continue, just like you were saying, Christine, that we continue down the line of continuing to create these stories so that people that are trans or any kind of underutilized personality and face out there is more familiar. And I know personally that I get cast a lot as a Black woman. I'm biracial. I know a lot of my darker sisters, Nana, we've talked about this before, don't get cast because I'm definitely more easier of a pill to swallow for America just because of my lighter skin. That's a conversation that needs to be had. So I think that if you're worried about the kid in Wichita that won't be able to see somebody that actually represents them on screen, then maybe you need to not say that Scarlett should have gotten the job, and you just need to fight for somebody that will be able to be on camera showing that kid in Wichita that they're all right and that they're going to be okay and that they're represented. So I think that we need to be part of the solution instead of saying that there's an issue, start creating solutions. You know, I vow to stand more with my trans Black sisters and hopefully lift those voices up, create projects that lift those up, support, back, donate, you know, some kind of social media push or do whatever I can to use my voice for people with less of a platform. That's what we can do in moments like this.
Beautiful, beautiful. Clara, anything else?
I can't top what she just
I know.
said. So
it was pretty good.
I'm gonna
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you guys so much. It's 6:10, so we've run a little over. I don't want to keep everybody.
I'm going to come back on.
Oh,
right?
God.
The voice is on.
I said I'd come back on.
You did. We forgot.
This is fantastic. Just I miss you all so much. I miss your voices. I miss your hearts. And we'll have to do this again.
Yeah.
So, as I hope, really educational for me. I learned so much. I need to tell everybody that we'll be doing more of these. We can look on the website, Instagram, Facebook. The best ways to find us. Get hooked up with us on Instagram so you get all that stuff. It's the easiest way. And you can still donate to Black Theater United. I'm still going to advocate for that. You can keep donating. They're really happy to get the donation. And this is recorded, so if you have friends who you think would benefit from it, tell them about it. It'll be on our YouTube. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel too, and you should. It helps us with our visibility. So please do that. And as always, if you're interested in classes, please look at our website, what our offerings is. Make sure you get our newsletter so that you can find out what we're doing. The latest class, it's a couple weeks away, so it's not, I know there's some seats available. And John Douglas Thompson, a phenomenal actor who's teaching a Shakespeare class. And the Shakespeare classes aren't often as popular, but he's an incredible Shakespearean actor and an incredible guy. You can hear him now on Richard II. He's in that production on WNYC Public Theater. It's pretty great. I think last night was last night, but they're running it. Okay. Please, be well. Also, if you have ideas for this forum, send them in. We're wide open. If you have people you think should be heard and can educate us and entertain us, we'll do it. And I want to thank Nana especially for moderating. I do want to hear more about what's going on. That kind of allows you to hear more. And to Clara and Christine and Margot, I love you all. So everyone, stay strong in your body and in your mind, and of course in your art. And we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.